Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Eggerding, and this is Unit 1, Video 6, and we're going to introduce something today called function notation. Function notation is used a whole heck of a lot in mathematics because it can convey a lot of information in a very short piece of writing. So, first of all, what is function notation? Let's start with what you already know. You are already familiar with things like y equals 9x minus 5. You're used to seeing those equations, and we can even do some things like if x equals 2, we can plug that in. 9 times 2 is 18 minus 5, and we say y is 13. We can do it with, say, negative 1. If x equals negative 1, we get y to be negative 14. Now these two things here highlight some information. First of all, we call x an independent variable. Independent variable. I just picked a random number out of the air. It didn't matter what it was. However, y we call a dependent variable. We call y the dependent variable because it depended on what we decided to pick for x. So what function notation does is function notation allows us to express this relationship between independent and dependent variables a little more clearly. So if I take the same problem and write it in function notation, it looks like this. F parentheses x equals 5x minus 5. And when you read this, we read this as f of x. And what this f stands for, the f stands for the name of the functions we're talking about. So we're calling this function f. The x stands for the independent variable. So this notation is telling me I'm talking about some function. I'm talking about some function called x, or some function called f, and x is its independent variable. So I can repeat what I did on the left-hand side and say, okay, what's f of 2? And what this notation means is I'm going to take some function called f, and I'm going to make my independent variable 2. So if I go to the other side, that means I'm going to take my 9. My independent variable is x. This notation says make it 2. And it's 9 times 2 is 18, minus 5 is 13. F of negative 1 means I'm going to take a function called f, and I'm going to make my independent variable negative 1. Plugging that in up here, it's going to give me negative 14. And so we have this relationship between the y and the f of x in the expression. So sometimes you may see it written as y equals f of x equals 9x minus 5. The 9x minus 5, that's the expression that we're working with. Y over here, that's my dependent variable. Or some people will just call it the value of the function. F, that's what we're naming our function. And the x here is telling me what the independent variable is. Okay. When we get into class, we're going to do a lot more with this whole idea of independent and dependent, but we just wanted to introduce the notation to you here. So what's it going to look like for you for now? Well, we have two functions here, and we have named them f and g. So we have f of x and g of x. They're two different expressions, so they get two different names. The things we're going to ask you to do is to evaluate something like f of 3. So this means I go to my function named f. I make my independent variable 3. Here is my function f. I'm going to make my independent variable 3. Plug that in and evaluate. See, I get negative 9 plus 15 minus 3. I get f of 3 equals 3. Same thing, I can talk about g of 7. This means find a function called g, make your independent variable 7. Here's a function called g, make the independent variable 7. So I get 2 times 7 plus 3. So g of 7 is 17. I'm not limited to just plugging in numbers. I can plug in variables. I can evaluate f of a. Means take a function that's named f, make the independent variable a instead of x. I could say g of n. Find a function named g, make my independent variable n, and you get 2n plus 3. So all the function notation is doing is the number in parentheses is telling you what to plug in for all of the x's. So you're going to plug this in for all the x's. Like I said, there is a little bit more to it. We'll hit that in class. For now, we just want you guys to get some practice evaluating, and that's on page 210 on page numbers 41 to 48. And we will see you later. Thanks a lot for listening.